Matt, over.
Okay, guys, thank you for having me. It's been a long night. I'm going to try to get through this somewhat quickly. I'll skip over a lot of the technical complexity. I'll allow everybody to ask questions if we want. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about who we are, give you some kind of brief history about our project. I'm happy to be joined today by my co-founder, Jin, who's at the back of the room. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we got here, why we're deciding to solve this problem, what our network looks like today, where the next kind of couple of years of roadmap goes. But in terms of like getting into specifics, I'll let you guys grab that. If you have any questions, we'll dive into whatever you want to talk about. Just to start, how many people have heard about AION before? Okay, how many, sorry, maybe a different question. Who has not heard about AION? Just to have a good understanding. Okay. So quickly, AION is a public blockchain protocol that we've been developing for the last just over 1 year now. The company behind this is a company that I co-founded with my co-founders about 2 years ago. Originally, we were working on kind of enterprise infrastructure in the blockchain space. We eventually stumbled on a set of problems that we wanted to solve with the public network. So we started designing this public network early 2017. I'll give you kind of some recaps about what happened last year. We had a fundraising event last year. We've been growing the team. We've been working with our partners at Centris here in Romania. We have a team back in Toronto, Shanghai, Barbados. So the team is very much growing kind of around the world. But more importantly, I want to talk to you about what problems we started to solve with AION. So when we looked at the industry, if you go back, Soren did a good job giving us the history of the blockchain industry. All of this is essentially a movement towards decentralization. Decentralization of our economies, decentralization of our governments, decentralization of our companies, our currencies, et cetera, et cetera. The problem that we've seen over the course of the last 9 years is that most of the ways that we've tried to solve these problems are unscalable. They don't really reach the kind of mainstream market realities that we need if we want to start rethinking how we develop financial systems and government systems and healthcare systems, et cetera, et cetera. So we focused in on two problem areas. And with this is kind of our attempt to design an architecture for what the future of the decentralized internet will look like. And when we say the decentralized internet, we essentially talk about why the centralized internet, or the previous generation of the internet, failed to achieve some of its goals. It failed to be completely accessible. It failed to be a level playing field for different countries. It failed to really create economic equality across the world. And it's still left behind these like borders and centralized entities that kind of manage the way we interact with the internet today. So that's big internet giants like Google and Baidu. It's also the fact that borders still exist and currencies are still limited by these kind of geographic borders. So if we want to redesign the decentralized internet, there's a couple of problems we need to solve. Specifically, we focus on two things very, very broadly on our roadmap. One is the scalability of a public network, and two is the interoperability between public networks. So how do we allow for transactions and data and value and logic to move between networks? And how do we allow one of these networks to be significantly more scalable than the designs of other networks? So with that, we published our AION white paper in July of last year. Quick little recap of what happened last year. We did a token raise in September, October. We raised about, at the time, about $25 million. We've seen the kind of excitement around our project grow pretty consistently over the course of the last year. We've got some pretty kind of ambitious targets of what the next 12 months look like. We launched our public network in about 6 weeks ago, which was a big accomplishment for our engineering team. We have a few milestones on our public network, but the first version is already out and being mined. Folks like Centris are helping build some of these tools for mining, et cetera, on the public network. We've been doing events like this kind of everywhere that you can imagine around the world. I tend to live on an airplane more than back home these days, just to do meetups and go to conferences and just talk about what AION is developing around the world. This number on the second last bullet is growing kind of constantly. We have about 8 development companies around the world that are doing application development and product development and integrations on top of AION. Now we're about 12 countries, and then the team is about 60 people in 4 countries for our team. So the next 12 months, this is where we intend to kind of see our goals reach for the project. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we organize ourselves to accomplish these goals, how we're keeping ourselves kind of accountable to our market. But we're looking at a 12-month goal of becoming not so much as a measure of market cap in dollars, but really as a relative measure to our peers, a top 10 protocol in the market. A top 10 existing protocol in the market. There's many of these top 10 coins that are not real protocols. They're just promises of future technology. So a top 10 real protocol. top 10 protocol by hash power, a top 10 application for decentralized apps to get built, 50 development partners in more countries. We said 15, it could be larger. And the team we expect will grow to something like 100 people over that period of time in different development centers, regional development centers around the world. So all of this is really to position AION to be one of the global and leading protocols in the world. And to do that, we decided that, well, we looked at the market and we realized that one of the big flaws in this market that we don't talk enough about is the lack of governance and proper accountability in how projects are being built. So we launched something called the AION Foundation. We used to be a for-profit software company. We've been reorganizing ourselves over the last 6 months into a non-profit software foundation. A lot of this model we've taken and studied off of the Linux Foundation on how do we create a governance system that can survive the next 50 to 100 years, regardless of the individual people involved in the project today. So one thing that we take very seriously at AION is that there's a lot of excitement and opportunistic behavior in this market. Lots of people looking for money, looking for quick payouts, looking for quick ICO returns, and then they leave and they move on to the next thing, where they're already on their 5th or 6th ICO by the time the market hits 2019, which is kind of crazy. So with that, we decided to restructure ourselves so that we could really keep an accountability structure to the community of people that are building with us, supporting us, and using us to build applications. One of the things that we take very seriously when we shifted from being a software company with customers to a community project with users is that the network of people that rely on us now is growing into the thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. So if we fail to get governance right, then all of these people who rely on this technology to build their businesses essentially fail to accomplish those goals over time. So with that, over the course of the next 12, actually the AION Foundation exists now. We've been finishing this restructuring over the last few months. And a big part of that is going to be like perfectly transparent accountability to our community. How are we spending our money? How are we prioritizing use of proceeds? How are we deciding what technical features to make their way into the roadmap? How do we invite people into our technical steering committee, et cetera, to make sure that the way we organize ourselves is with accountability kind of first and foremost. So with that, I'm going to walk you through a couple of the features that we've been building into the roadmap. And by the way, this is Jin, who just walked up here, my co-founder, so I'm sure he'll have a few words to say. But a quick view of what AION is from an architectural perspective, and I'll keep it very high level. AION is essentially a network that was designed to address kind of 3 key pillars. One, a code base that could be used to create a public network and to be replicated across multiple public networks, but also a code base that could theoretically be used to create new private networks. A scalable solution for how do we do faster and better transaction throughput on top of these networks at the execution layer, at the consensus layer, at the API layer, all the way through the stack. And then a network that actually has native to its design this idea of interoperability. How do I recognize that transactions happened on other blockchains and pull those proofs into my blockchain, essentially, so that I can write more complex transactions that start to look a little bit more like if this happened on blockchain A, then trigger this on blockchain B. And today that function or these types of applications don't exist. So if you build an application on a single blockchain today, you're kind of tied to the logic and inputs and outputs of that blockchain. And you're tying yourself to what could potentially become a sinking ship if you pick the wrong blockchain accidentally. All of your business logic goes away with the blockchain the moment people stop buying it, for example. So that's something that we think is going to become increasingly important. We think that there's a long-term architecture that looks something like this. And essentially this turns into much more of a spider web, but when we look at blockchains as a technology leading to kind of the next generation of the internet, it doesn't make sense that it happened in isolated, fragmented systems. Today, we don't have a single blockchain. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of blockchains, and we think that that number probably grows over time. Many protocols, many blockchains using those protocols, and with that fragmentation, complete isolation of business logic and processes. So if we don't start to think about how do we essentially connect the dots, how do we create the equivalent of like a TCP/IP communication framework for all of these networks to coexist and recognize each other's existence, then we don't actually get to this new decentralized internet that we're trying to build. So in this model, we have kind of in this bottom right corner, the AION public network as kind of a public network that you can build applications on, but also a public network that acts sort of like a routing system to recognize that data and transactions are happening on other systems and pull those pieces of data in so that you can execute logic on the back of that. So that's kind of the public network here in the corner. And then we have a concept that we're working on called bridges. These bridges are essentially decentralized communication processes. So a group of nodes, a subset of these nodes, can go and look for proofs of events on other blockchains and pull those proofs of events back into our blockchain. And then you can build those into the structure and logic of an application. So this starts to become really interesting, whether you're talking to other public networks. We're building right now, the first bridge is an AION to Ethereum bridge. So that's an example of a bridge to another public network, or whether you're connecting to private networks for enterprises or to other AION networks that we call spoke networks in our design. So that's kind of the way this all kind of scales out, is eventually this turns into a multi-tier system where blockchains can use each other to route transaction proofs from one blockchain to another. So at the end of this, we kind of end up with this big spiderweb of systems that all interact with each other, whether they're written in the same native protocol or not, which is a big challenge today, where most protocols are essentially written completely differently. Transaction formats and block structures and consensus algorithms are all different from one network to another. So the interpretation of these messages and these transactions from one to another is very difficult to maintain. I'm going to stop there in case you have something. Do you want to add something here?
You finished?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor, right? We are Canadians and actually first time being in Romania. So thank you everyone, and so especially for giving us opportunities. You know, I barely speak in front of public because I'm CTO, right? I'm coders. I write 200,000 lines of code for this AION kernel. But every time we do presentation, our CEO Matthew spoke covers tech stuff. Right? I don't cover tech stuff. I want to ask a few simple questions. How many people here have Bitcoin? Almost half. How many people here have Bitcoin more than 1 year? Oh, still a lot. 2 years. Oh, still few. 3 years. 5 years. If you own Bitcoin 5 years, you won't be here. Because why? You are billionaire. This young man, my partner, he is billionaire. AION is top 50 biggest crypto globally now. But why we are here? All those ICO project leader, CEO, CTO, where are they? They are in driving Lamborghinis. They in cruise parties with sex ladies. Right? We are here. Why you own Bitcoin? Very simple question. You own 1 to 3 years. I own Bitcoin 5 years. 5 years ago, I quit Morgan Stanley. I'm a Wall Street guy. I have 5,000 Bitcoin. Now I only have 50. How I spend my Bitcoin? You own Bitcoin because US dollar sucks. That's the only reason you own Bitcoin. You own Bitcoin is not because you want to be rich, because you want something you can trust. You can trust across wars. You can trust when the world have real problems like big depressions, the whole economic crash, but the internet still there, your assets still there. So blockchain here now, it's 9 years since Bitcoin. We, the first generation blockchain Bitcoin owners, we have belief because we think this technology is like internet. Internet help people communicate to each other easier. You have social software, you have email, and you have eBay, you have Amazon. The blockchains help people to trust each other. But nowadays, I'm so depressed, I'm disappointed. The technology we built today actually is not bring the trust to each other. It's what? It help you get rich, or you help you get money from somebody else. That's why we are here. We never sleep. We travel globally, and I love Romania. Because Romania, there is no any ICO project I hate. Here, it's pure country. The people we can trust. Right? Yeah. You have lots of labor country, there's lots of scam stuff, but here, it's real engineers. I'm an engineer, I like people here. The question we ask here, like we just present, it's real engineers attitude. What's the engineer attitude? Change the world, makes the world better. Our human histories, few thousand years, who makes the world better? Technology and engineers, nothing else. Not our empire, not our Congress. Only engineers change the world, bring beautiful life. I tried to train my CEO to be an engineer. So when we have the AION bridge was building, right? We have spokes. Spokes is our CEO's name. So we build the spoke chain and we use bridge connect them. So think about it. Nowadays, what's the blockchain? Blockchain is like early days of the internet. There's no inter, but only net. No real network. Apple Talk network. You go to net bars, only 8 computers can connect, you can play e-game. But you cannot connect at the whole things. So blockchain, we have Bitcoin, Ether, and whatever else. They are siloed, they are isolated. They are not able to connect with each other. So interoperability is a big challenge for blockchain. You can trust your neighbor, but you cannot trust the other countries. This is a blockchain. The Bitcoin trust Bitcoin. The Ether believer trust Ether. And there's some ridiculous things is like EOS projects, they say I'm an Islam killer. If it's internet, can you say that is network kill another network? No way, right? We are all connected. We have fiber connection connect under the ocean, connect continent together. So AI's vision, anyway, AION, anybody know what that means? 2 meaning, AION Network. The second meaning, AION is open chain network. Linux is not Unix, same type of things, right? So AION is open chain network. How make it open? Open means you come in, welcome. I'm not an Islam killer. I'm an Islam lover. Ether, come in, welcome. Bitcoin, let's do it together, right? So this is our vision, but what's the realities? The reality nowadays, there is no single blockchain can run credit card business. The Bitcoin can do whatever transaction, 100%, right? And if you want to do more, can we? Yes, you pay $100 for one transaction. Somebody give his ticket to you, right? So easy, how many transactions they can do on the public main chain? 20. Why is 20? Because the crypto kitty was playing there and whole network stuff, right? So can you say I pay $100 to make it 50? No ways. The Vitalik don't like money, right? You have no way to run it. So those type of technology was created by a 90-year-old boys. He created Waterloo, which is Toronto's top university, but he is not a coder. He never read a single line of code, and people believe him. This is wrong. You should believe me because I write 200,000 lines of code and I never speak in front, public front. Why is that? Think about Bitcoin. Anybody read Bitcoin white paper? What Bitcoin white paper's name? Bitcoin is decentralized peer-to-peer payment system, transaction system. That's the white paper's name. Who is the author? Satoshi. You know who is the Satoshi? Does Satoshi talk in front of the public? Never. That's why you can trust, because anonymous people, real engineer attitude, they contribute and you believe it. You tell him, you believe it? He never read a single line of code and he talked in front of the public. Think about that, right? So what I'm dreaming is Romania. Here we are IT engineers. We really write code, but don't speak in front of the public. I only speak once a year, right? So this is our vision. We try to build an internet for blockchain, but internet can be ISDN driven. Internet can be modern. Anybody use modern here? 33.6 kilobytes per second, right? That's a modern. That's still internet. So internet has high throughput. They have low throughput. Now we have a fiber network. What we can do? We can do 3 networks in one. The telephone network, the video network, the TV network, and the internet hypertext network. But that's how long after the internet was built. 20 years later, we can do 3 networks in one. So the blockchain is exactly like 20 years ago. Now we have no way to do 3 networks in one. So the Ether network say we are public computer. Is that correct? That's a dream. That's 20 years later. Now, even you use as your personal laptop, they're gonna still crash. That's the reality. You connect 1,000 personal laptops together. It's gonna be faster? Yes, depends on what you're running on it, right? So AION's vision At least we know the network is slow, but we still can we still can bridging all those slow network together, make it a little bit faster. That's our AION mainnet. We call it Kilimanjaro. We can do 6x, 600 times percentage better than Ethereum network, but we are not proud of that. In engineer attitude, you can do 10% more optimized. You cannot sleep whole night, right? Because my application is better than you. My code is more efficient. But now we did 600% faster than Ethereum. We're still depressed. We know we are still not global computer. We are not public computer because all the people here send transaction by AION. Maybe you lost the transaction somehow, right? If you run some bots, right? Bots, high frequency trading, you cannot handle that. But sooner or later, there is one day when blockchain is no chain. When blockchain have no block, that's gonna happen. Does Bitcoin say Bitcoin is blockchain? No, Bitcoin never said Bitcoin is blockchain. Why are people talking about blockchain every day now? This is a fake concept. Don't talk it anymore. Because if you transits together, you screw each other, right? Because you put things in a block, it's limited. So AION's next and third generation is parallel, non-block transaction system. This decentralized transaction system. Forget about block, forget about chain. That's a transaction graph, transaction trees. So at that moment, we can handle much more transaction. How many? 1 million? Impossible. Any ICO project tells you can do 1 million transaction, 500,000, 100,000, don't buy any token sale. Don't buy that ICO. They are lying. What's the rate? 90% of ICO project is lying. That's why I'm here to tell you, right? Because Ethereum today, how big is the database? 1 terabyte. 1 terabyte big database. How many transactions they can handle? 20. If you handle 1 million transactions per second, how big that database is? You spend all the AWS, Azure, the Google storage. There's nowhere to store that type of data. It's very common sense. If you're an engineer, single calculation, you know that, right? But why people don't trust those common sense? Right, because you are greedy. You think about Bitcoin, you gotta go to move, okay? Yeah. So hold Bitcoin, please, but because you trust it, it's better than US dollars. Don't because you want to be billionaire, but already too late. But AION maybe. Why AION maybe? Because think about if AION was connect all the public chain together, what's gonna happen? That is tower, right? That is tower. You cross a highway. I don't know in Canada we only have one highway is charged, right? But every time I drive to New York, I need to pass the tunnel. They charge me $10. I say I'm come from Canada. I have no coins, and let me go. That's really nice, right? But the AION's connecting network, it's your choice. There is free lane and there is tower lane. You need to pay 10 cents or maybe you say 1 cent. So AION is a utility token. There is only 2 use cases for all the blockchain today. Which 2 use cases? Fiat currency, cryptocurrency. One, you use that token as coin, as dollar value stuff. The second, contract platform. Contract platform is what? We sign something, code is law, and we do it. The blockchain helps you do it. Right? But sometimes the code is law, you believe it. All coder, or programmer, or engineer believe it. But Vitalik don't, Ethereum don't. Right? When they have DAO, anybody know DAO? DAO, right? DAO is the people put the Ether Bitcoin in the contract and let the contract make a decision which ICO project they funded. So DAO have a bug, they lost 20 million. So transaction is not reversible. All the blockchain believers believe this system nobody can manipulate. But unfortunately, the Ethereum Foundation's attitude is you can steal, I can steal it back. I prove I have more power than you. So what they did, they steal it back. That's why I created Ethereum Foundation. I start new client AION. You steal it back, it's big mistake because you lost the passion why you do these technologies, why we build this decentralized system. Decentralized system is help you build beautiful, trustable world. So AION was here. So AION have four components. Every component we can do 100 million ICO, but we sell it as a bundle. We even not sell everything. We only sell 1%, 2%, less than 10%, because we think the money we raise is enough. We don't need more money. That's engineers' attitude. Sorry, Matt. You can be 10 billionaire, but I hold you, right? So what the EOS did, they sell for whole year. What the hell is that? You sell for whole years, non-stop sell ICOs, right? So four components in the AION network: the AION bridge, the AVM, AION virtual machine, the AION contract language, which you won't write bugs that easy, the AION consensus, delegate distributed proof of stake system combined with proof intelligence. So AION sold four components. None of them is easy. So we have the first generation, we want to launch a mainnet. You know how many mainnet launch fail? The EOS say they're gonna launch mainnet in April, but postponed to May. It's supposed to be tomorrow. And they found a bug and they say, oh yeah, the announcement for mainnet announced that we postponed to legal department. So engineers say, they raised millions of dollars. Nobody knows where those dollars goes. Every dollar we raised, we audit it. We make it transparent to every investor, to every engineer. You can check our records. So all those four components. The second one is AVM. So VM, VM never be fast. The H1 VM or AION VM or EOS VM or Tron VM, that matter, or Qtum VM. Or nowadays, because it's blockchain, so all the VM is sequentially executed. It's like you only have a single core in your server, single core. Single core world computing is impossible. So the only solution is parallel VM, cluster VM, thousands of cores together. That's a big challenge for engineers now. Maybe we need a few years. Think about JVM, the Java Virtual Machine. The Sun Microsystems spans thousands of engineers, more than 3 years to do POC and 10 years. It's industry strength. So what's industry strength? 24/7, you run 10 years, never crashed. So EOS, before they launch, they already crashed. The Ether, sometimes we are in Shanghai 2016. We are in Ethereum DevCon and EVM crash, whole network start. So people really forget things really fast. But please remember what I'm talking about today. The AVM gonna be parallel VM. We're gonna be parallel VM. We can handle multiple contracts execute in parallel, concurrently. The third one, the AION scripting contract language. The contract language is code is law. Code is law means what? It's hard code, right? Programmer hate this word, hard code. Hard code means the code you cannot change. If you change, maybe have regression bug, or your PM don't like you change the code, you need architecting. But the hard code, the good thing is human is really to understand. It's very easy to visualize. So this is contract, we call it smart contract. But hard code means what? Stupid contract, right? Anybody read contract already or not? If you read the contract, you see, oh, this contract is like kids code because it's JavaScript. And because they're running on thousands of nodes, and meanwhile, if your code is slow, everybody get tortured. Right? So how to make this hard-coded contract to be real smart? We call it soft programming. So what's the soft programming is? Soft programming is you don't use code to describe the logic. You use code to describe how the world's supposed to be, and the code itself learn how to behave correctly. So somebody already used my concept, but I use the same term. It's intelligent contract. Intelligent contract is what? We use deep neural network model to describe how the contract is supposed to be. Think about the Google AlphaGo. we play Go game together. The Go game is an intelligence contract deployed on internet. Everybody can play with it. Everybody play with it, gonna be smarter, and all the data is on the network. So that's AION's contract language. The second generation, we're gonna have AION scripting language. The third generation, we're gonna integrate TensorFlow or Cave to make it soft programmable. You can deploy deep neural network on blockchain and describe the real-world logic, like autonomous driving. That's too big to 20 years later. But some simple stuff, like AlphaGo, maybe you can try it. So I think that's basically the AIONs for a component, or last component. Last component is a hybrid delegate consensus system. So proof of work is what? Proof of work is you use your GPU as what? As your gun, right? So American cannot buy the gun because what? If the government wants to be able, what is gonna happen? You have no gun, you have no voice. You have gun, you have voice. Those stupid policies, you can against it. So your GPU actually is your gun. You can against something, abuse your principles. What's the stake? Proof of stake. What's the stake? Stake is the money. Stake is the money. So if a pure proof of work system or pure proof of stake system, that's all extreme crazy idea. If you say a whole world is dominated by billionaires, definitely problem, right? Because they can clone themselves, right? They can do stem cell injection to make them have 15 more years life than you have. So you need gun, right? So AION's consensus is combine the money and weapon together, right? Every time you put $1 million on the table, you need the GPU to prove you have the hash power. In the future, you can train your software programming logic, intelligence contract to guarantee the whole decentralized system trustable by billionaires, also by our ordinary peoples. That's the AION's consensus, and it's delegate consensus. That's gonna be 3 years later, 2 years later. Our engineering work on that part. Okay, yeah, that's for components for the AION. Yeah, back to
yeah, and maybe I'll conclude quickly on that. Thanks, Jin. I'll conclude quickly just by going back a second on. It's not working now. Anyways, the slide doesn't matter. I'll conclude quickly by saying I think what's important from what Jin's saying that you probably don't hear enough about in this market is that problems like this. I was going to go backwards, but problems like this are like 10-year, 20-year problems, right? So these are not. We continuously are trying to remind the market of this, that the reason we're structuring this, the AION Foundation, is we're trying to take personal profit motivation out of the equation. We're trying to take, put governance and accountability and transparency in front of everything we do, so that 10 years from now, AION continues to exist. 20 years from now, AION continues to exist. In fact, Jin and I just last week talking about the governance model, we're looking at how the Nobel Foundation is structured so that 100 years from now, the AION Foundation still exists. I think when we look at the market today, the biggest red flag we see, the biggest concern we have, is if you look at 95% of the leadership among blockchain projects today, ask yourself the question, is that person still going to be with that project even 2 years from now? You already find founders of projects that are onto their 5th ICO. So all of a sudden they promise something to the market, they raise money, they put it in their pocket, they go away, they do something else, promise to the market, raise money, go away, and there's some that are already onto their 5th ICO, right? So one of the biggest things that we think is missing in the conversation around these technologies is that eventually the best ideas are going to converge. Eventually the best teams are going to converge, the best minds are going to converge. So the only real thing that's going to matter at the end of the day is who's got the long-term vision and the long-term commitment to get it done. And I think if anything, that's something that we're trying to just constantly remind the market is that there's way too much noise in this market. And if you can focus in on the right metrics, and those metrics are not daily price volatility, those metrics are like long-term impact, then I think you'll end up finding that AION's a project that you want to be following. So with that, thank you guys. I think we're just about wrapping up, but I can take a few questions if you have for either Jin or myself. Thank you. Any questions before we go? Yeah.
Yeah. So, which do you see to be your main competition in this area? Because it's like you said, you're in the enterprise. There, it's like it was middleware integrating all the software. in big enterprises, and it's like somebody did it at the beginning, and then there was a lot of competition. So I assume that will be the case for you. Like there will be a lot because this is like really obviously useful business case.
I think there's two possible directions we think the market could go. The market either goes to we all eventually circulate and adopt a single protocol, or the market continues to be fragmented and we've got multiple protocols where interoperability is required. In both markets, our competition changes depending on which way the market evolves. So if it evolves towards interoperability, then we don't really see the market as competition. We see this as essentially integrations. So if EOS, we've got our opinions about EOS, but if EOS continues to exist long term, then it's a connection to EOS. Ethereum exists long term, it's a connection to Ethereum. And these become essentially sub-networks inside this internet of blockchains, rather than thinking of all of these as competitive solutions. In the other model, then you're looking at which single protocol will have the longest long-term impact. Then it's kind of any of these public chain systems that are being proposed and built today. I think another big thing that we talk a lot about as a team is there seems to be a big gap in like engineering discipline in this market. You hear a lot of research ideas, a lot of white papers. You won't see a lot of published implemented code, production code. So you see a lot of projects drop off before they get to the production release, because that is challenging, right? Writing a paper can be pretty simple. Implementing a production system is going to be challenging. So when we look at a lot of these leading projects that are building protocols, we don't really consider them competition until we actually see production code out of them. Right now, we're seeing a lot of projects that, as far as we're concerned, have failed to prove that they're credible enough to actually produce production code. So, but that could be EOS, Cardano, Ethereum, Neo, Quantum, whatever these public networks that are taking a lot of mainstream attention today. On the interoperability side, there's a few other projects that we track closely that are working on solutions that look similar to our bridge. But in terms of like having this all in like one single roadmap, there's not a lot of projects out there. So on the interoperability side, for simple bridge solutions, you've got projects like Cosmos, Icon, Polkadot, a few others that are just kind of simply focusing on the interoperability layer. So we're kind of stitching these two together. But the market, right now, I think the market's too small to talk about competition, because there's probably 99% growth in front of us still.
So one other question is, so how is the MVP looking for you, right? So it's like something happens on Bitcoin blockchain, and I don't know.
So we started
demoing it, and then
we started demoing our first bridge implementation a couple of weeks ago. We'll be publishing like a testnet version of that bridge. Like the public network itself is in its public network, like it's a live production network. The bridge layer above that is probably a couple of weeks away from being released as a test version. And that's an AION to Ethereum bridge. So the ability to recognize an event on the Ethereum network and pull that event in, and maintaining like a decentralized consensus process on the bridge. So that's a few weeks to a month away from having something that the community will be able to look at. But there's some videos online of like demos that we've done in the bridge, some flowchart explanations. In fact, I think I didn't get into it today because I don't want to jump too much into roadmap. But this is very, very high level what the bridge is looking like, and it's essentially node clusters on either side of the bridge, and a process in the middle for like a simple, lightweight consensus process to agree on what transaction we need to witness. So these are like AION nodes, there's Ethereum nodes with this bridge cluster in the middle that are validating that there's authentic proof of the transaction on either side of the bridge and then signaling to the other network. This is built today, and so that's going to be something that we publish in the next little while.
Hey. You mentioned you touched on a lot of social stuff. You mentioned governance, accountability, transparency, healthcare, and other stuff. Where would you see a first implementation in that area of this sort of technology?
I think one of the realizations we had, and this is, different people have different perspectives on this, but one of the realizations we had over the last couple of years, Jen and I have been working together 3.5 years or something. We did mostly enterprise business for like the first 2 years of that, right? And I think what we recognized is that the challenge is that this design of a system challenges the fundamental business models of these enterprises. So to try to take their existing business model and replicate it onto a blockchain, in many cases is illogical. It's kind of contrary. These are systems that will build new forms of governance and new forms of economic activity. So this is depending on the time horizon. I think if you zoom out enough and you look at like a 20-year, 50-year, 100-year time horizon, we're pretty passionate believers that this changes everything in society. It changes the reason we have government, it changes the reason we have borders, it changes the reason we have currencies. But in the shorter term, I think it changes the way businesses are built. you know, if you look at for like
first scale to public
Yeah.
as private.
Yeah, and I think like you look at analogy to the early internet days, you know, the first banks to like adopt the internet put up like a brochure on a URL. And they said, look, I have a website. You know, they weren't actually changing anything about their business. And so it was the real kind of internet companies that built something fundamentally new. And I think we're going to see the same thing here. You're going to see the new versions of these new business models evolve like natively on the blockchain rather than migrated onto the blockchain primarily. So we don't know exactly how that's going to play out. But the biggest gap today is that none of the infrastructure is ready for that. So, you know, if you can't trade digital cats online, there's no way you're going to move, you know, global remittance payments online either. So that's where we still have some scaling challenges to solve. And, you know, we hope that the industry can stay as focused as possible on that infrastructure layer for now. Because, you know, it's kind of like building pets.com in 1995. A great idea, but too early, you know, and I think that some of the challenges we're seeing with a lot of applications in the blockchain space today.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right, guys. Oh, yeah.
What's a useful app that can take advantage of the breach?
Well, a simple example that we're talking about right now is decentralized exchanges. So if you're just looking at the crypto economy, for example, big challenge. I mean, the irony of the crypto economy is that everybody relies on centralized exchanges for processing. So they all deposit into Binance or Coinbase or whatever. Decentralized exchanges only exist to the extent they live on one blockchain. So all the DEXs out there are Ethereum asset decentralized exchanges, so only for Ethereum assets. The idea of a decentralized exchange that can cross networks doesn't exist yet. So, I mean, for a probably next 1 year, 18-month type solution, I think decentralized exchanges will be useful. Beyond that, there's a lot of use cases where we see kind of domains interacting with each other, like, and this might be 5 years out, 10 years out, but you see, you know, medical records getting recorded on blockchains, and once a procedure happens, it verifies an insurance policy, and once the insurance policy has been verified, it triggers a payment. And all of this happens kind of autonomously through decentralized apps that might exist on different blockchains, and you're kind of moving this value between them. But yeah, probably in the short term, decentralized exchanges are the most relevant. Yeah. And if you guys want to learn more, you know, because some of you, this is the first time, I mean, here's our coordinates. You can find us online, check out our GitHub, get in touch with our team. We've got tons of social channels. Our forum, you know, our engineers are pretty active on our GitHub. So any way you want to learn more, get involved, we'd be happy to hear from you. And obviously, you're here in Cluj, so you guys get to know the Centris team because they know us very well as well. So they're a good kind of local arm of what we're doing here in Romania. So thanks, guys. Thank you.